Yes, guys, welcome to Chasing Green Arrows. It's our Friday night special. It's me and Dean as always, but we're joined by a very special guest this evening, Mr. Ian Irving, Mr. Manchester himself, Ian Irving. Ian, how are you, mate?
That's the nicest two things you've ever called me, Gianni, to be fair. I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, mate, we can't wait to chat FPL with you for the next hour, knowing you were only with Pep Guardiola a few hours ago and now you're chilling with me and Dean on a Friday night. Thanks for your company, mate.
The day's only going one way, isn't it, really?
Dean, how you doing, mate?
He means up, mate. Yeah, I'm good. I do
mean up,
Look, you get to be a little bit more laid back here and casual and say what you actually mean and what you really want to say when you're in those situations. So that's the good thing.
Look, we've got loads coming up in today's show. And guys in the chat, good to see so many of you on this bank holiday Friday. It's good to see Derek and Frederick and CH is with us. Let's talk. And Ali Hangarov. Ali, I think I'm right in saying you're now number 4 in the world. Let us know in the chat. I know you were at number 1 for so long. But yeah, get your questions in, guys. Throughout the next hour, we'll put some questions to both Dean and Ian. And of course, we've got our teams coming up. We've got Against the Obvious. Ian's got a pick in there for us. It may or may not be a Man United player. We've got Fresh Off the Press. We've got some captaincy chat. We're going to be talking City quite a bit as well. But first up, Ian, I want to know a little bit about you for those that aren't too familiar. So you're the Premier League's Manchester United, Manchester City guy. You're obviously well known for your Man United podcast, Talk the Devils. Tell us a little bit about sort of being an avid FPL player as well as a reporter.
Yeah, there are some crossovers, especially when you can sit in Pep Guardiola's press conference and ask about Erling Haaland's fitness. Not that I asked for my FPL team, obviously. Everyone needed to know, didn't they, how Haaland was from just a football perspective. But yeah, I've worked up here as a reporter for the Premier League for over a decade now, covering closely Manchester United and City for the Premier League's international content service. So, anyone outside the UK watching this may have seen some of my work over the years. I do Talk the Devils podcast for The Athletic as well, the Manchester United one. I've done that the last couple of years as well. Worked for Amazon, worked for loads of different people. So, yeah, it is interesting. I wouldn't have said that we have as much of an advantage as we used to because there's just so much information about now. Whereas when I first started this job playing FPL, you probably did have a bit of an advantage on other people because you were at so many games and you had access to stat packs and all that sort of stuff. But the information that's around now, I think that advantage has gone really, unfortunately for me.
Yeah, Dean, I guess that was something in the past you've benefited from. Like in the past, when the FPL deadline was like an hour before kickoff of the early kickoff, sometimes you might get some team news when you're at games and stuff. But now FPL kind of moved that to 90 minutes before to stop things like that, but also some kind of in the know stuff around injuries and key team news.
Yeah, so obviously I was a newspaper reporter for like a long time before I'd moved away. I went to Bleacher Report and stuff. And it was, you did see so much more because, like, if you think, like, when did I leave newspapers? Like 5-6 years ago. Like, it's only 6 years ago, really, that like the digital properly exploded on Twitter and stuff. So it was like 24/7. Like you see everything now that basically the print journalists see anyway. But didn't used to be the case at all. Like you'd have loads of stuff held back. You didn't even really even half the journalists didn't tweet half the stuff they were seeing and hearing. It was great, to be honest. Like you had a proper insight and you felt like you were actually inside because you'd have all this secret info or like little bits that you'd see. And now it's like a free for all, isn't it? Like everyone tweets everything they see and writes every single piece of information they know. Sometimes they go too far, to be honest. Like just keep it up your sleeve, lads. You want to need that later on when this bloke gets sacked. Don't let everything out. But such is the way now. The demand from news editors has changed too. So you have actually just got to regurgitate everything you've seen and heard. That didn't really used to be the case. So yeah, it used to be good. I remember like going to like pre-season games in particular, and your mates would be texting you, being like, "What's Troy Deeney looking like? You're at Watford v like Basingstoke or something," and it's like, "How's he looking? How's he looking?" I'm thinking of bringing him in. He's having a blinder, and you're like, "No, he doesn't look that good, mate. I would leave him out." He's in my team though. But yeah, it's definitely changed. But yeah, the insight, we've all got it now. We've all got it.
Change for the better for people like me, fans looking for that extra bit of info. Ian, tell us a little bit about chatting so often as you do to Ten Hag, but Pep Guardiola especially, because Pep is known as one of the trolls of the FPL community. We always talk about Pep Roulette. always cautious about bringing in Man City players. But actually, he's got a reputation for rotating his team, but there's also some glue guys as part of that team where you can go, yeah, they're fairly safe. And it was the quote we saw earlier that's been doing rounds on Twitter today that you asked him earlier. He trained the last 2 days, really good. He will be ready. Tell us a little bit about chatting to Pep and his character, and then also what it's like getting juicy bits of information out of him, because he can't be that easy to talk to. He doesn't strike me as the most sort of forthcoming manager.
Yeah, it depends what mood he's in. Some days are better than others. Actually, just on the point that you just mentioned there, I thought the second answer that he gave today when I asked about Haaland was perhaps a little bit more revealing than even the first answer. He doesn't always state explicitly that players are back in training and so on, like the answer you just gave. But the second answer, I said, does he need minutes against Southampton to be ready to play Bayern Munich? Because as we talk now, he's not kicked a ball for, what will it be, about 3 weeks, because he missed the international break. He missed the Liverpool game as well. And Pep just sort of said, we're not even thinking about Bayern Munich. We're thinking about Southampton. That's all our focus. He has to say that in some ways, but in other ways, that does give you the sort of idea that Haaland's going to be straight into that team. If he's fit enough to start, he will start that game, and he won't be thinking, oh, maybe I'll only give him 20 minutes and save him for Bayern. It's all out to beat Southampton. The points of pressure aren't they, for City in the Premier League title race? There's no margin for error for them at all. So they have to beat Southampton, and they've got a much better chance with Haaland in the team. In terms of speaking to managers, that was in a press conference earlier, but one-to-one, they tend to be a lot different. You tend to be able to sort of talk a bit more openly about different things. And Pep Guardiola's by no means the worst, because he does give answers, and he does give insight at times. You just got to learn over time to ask the right people the right questions in the right moments, which can be easier sometimes than others. But like Erik ten Hag, for example, I find him much more tricky to speak to, because I've not been interviewing him as long. I've not been asking him questions as often. So understanding exactly how to get the best out of people is almost the key, really. And the more that you speak to them, the more you understand. And obviously, then managers have different attitudes towards team news as well, don't they? I was laughing earlier reading David Moyes' quotes and having fond memories of when he was at Old Trafford about trying to get team news out of him. So, there's different ways to skin a cat, and all the cats are different. So yeah, it's an interesting.
The familiarity
challenge.
is key, though, isn't it? Like that's it. When you're in a presser, like if they recognise your face, if they know that you're always there, you tend to get that little bit more respect. Like if you're suddenly parachuted into another club's presser and you've got to ask an awkward question to someone that doesn't know your face, it's always just a bit more tense, and you're a bit more edgy about answering, aren't you?
Yeah, I was at Aston Villa the other week, and Unai Emery walked in, sat down with a black eye. And every instinct in my body's like, I need to ask him why he's got a black eye. I need to ask him why he's got a black eye. But I was like, nah, I'll leave it to one of the people who are here every week, I think.
Exactly.
Any team news, Unai, it's just like... But whereas if it's someone who you're with all the time, it would have been the first thing that you asked, because it was, he's got a black eye.
So glaring.
What's happened? Yeah. It wasn't anything dramatic. So, but yeah.
Well, that's what you said.
Yeah. Amy Buendia whacked him.
Love that, mate. Love having you on and hearing those little snippets. We got a 45 minutes to get through where we're going to be getting a bit about your FPL knowledge as well, because you're a pretty good FPL manager. I remember from working with you over the last couple of years, you've always had proper competitive ranks. Like from a former presenter on the FPL show, I'd expect to come on as a guest to your show and be like, yeah, I've got much better rank than the presenters. And usually you do. But in your case, it was always like your rank was always kind of the same as the experts. So how are you doing this season? Because I think you're beating me, aren't you?
Bless you, mate. That was a nice little tee up, wasn't it? I'm just having a look, actually, so I can be accurate. I'm 33,000 in the world. But actually, I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest, because just looking at my history for this season, game week 17, I'm 9,500. Game week 22, I'm just over 9,000. So I've drifted quite a bit. I was 40 odd thousand 2 or 3 weeks ago. So post World Cup, I've just not been as good as I was in the early parts of the season. My best ever finish is 3,500, which was in 2015. And I thought this year was the year that I could maybe have a go at that when I'm sort of around 9,000 a bit earlier on in the campaign. But drifted. So you probably brought me on at a bad time, actually. You probably should have had me when I was in my sweet spot a few weeks ago.
I don't know, mate. It still looks like a sweet spot at the moment to me.
Still pretty good, yeah.
And me and
Top
Dean.
10,000 is always the badge of honor, isn't it, really? And I suppose we should maybe caveat that a little bit with the fact that there's so many more players now and so much more information than there ever was. But yeah, I've had a couple of top 10,000 finishes in my history, so that's still probably my target for this season. I think it's going to be tough, to be fair.
My campaign is to move the top 10k to the top 1%, which would be like top 100k this season.
Funny you'd written a book about
I feel a little bit better.
Johnny, yeah?
And I did title my book that 4 or 5 years ago, so it was before its time. And I got a lot of stick when that book came out, going, "Why is it not called How to Get in the Top 10k?" And I was like, because the two authors don't have many finishes in the top 10k. We're doing the 1%.
Slight issue.
Yeah. Nuclear Atoms in the chat saying, "Greetings. Hi, Ian looks familiar. Was he the super sub when James Richardson wasn't on the FPL show?" It's exactly right, Nuclear. He was. Mark's asked about your best informed guess. Would Haaland get an hour or not? I think you can give a fairly quick answer on this one, Ian, can't you? He'll get an hour.
Sorry, repeat that. Sorry.
Haaland will get an hour, won't he?
I'd expect him to get it, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know for certain, obviously. We are talking about Pep Guardiola, but the certainty he was speaking in his press conference earlier, it felt like that, yeah.
Yeah. Lungani says, Pep's always trying to deceive to prepare for Southampton and he'll play Alvarez instead. Yeah, you just never know. Neil says, happy Easter from Ottawa. Punter reflecting on the Zuma goal, which I definitely called, but didn't bring him in myself. So yeah, good to see so many familiar faces in the chat. Make sure you're hitting that like button and subscribing. Look, we're going to get crack on with today's show. First up, we got fresh off the press. Dean's going to round up some of the news from outside of Manchester, and then we're going to go back to Ian for some headlines at United and City as well. So fresh off the press, up next.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit shorter than normal. We've obviously addressed Man City a bit already. We've all probably already brought in Haaland, so we don't need to go over that one. Chelsea is the one that I'm really intrigued by. No idea what we're really getting here. A lot of experts in the industry seem to think it's a good idea and everybody wins by Frank Lampard coming back. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that Frank Lampard is such a good option. What I do think is good, though, is for Mason Mount. So Mason Mount, surely, if you were thinking of Chelsea options now in FPL, Mason Mount has to come back into the thinking. Don't see any possibility now that Mason Mount doesn't get the contract that he wanted, because Frank Lampard's going to play him every single week in his preferred position, and he'll probably end with an absolute belter to the campaign. So I'm interested in that. The rest of that Chelsea setup is kind of up in the air now. I'm not sure how Lampard will deal with the Sterling, João Felix, Havertz conundrum. So that all needs to be dealt with. So Chelsea, bit up in the air. But if you fancy having a punt, Mason Mount, I reckon, could come back into the frame from this weekend. I think a few people I speak to that cover Chelsea too think it's very plausible that does happen. Liverpool's interesting. There was a few rumours around Diego Jota and Mo Salah missing training this week. And certainly, when I first heard about it and I was asked about it, and I think I did with Give Me Sport, and they were like, that's bad news, isn't it? I was like, well, obviously, yeah, that is bad news if they're missing training. It turns out, it sounds like it was a rest day for those two, and they should be okay. So looks like Jota and Salah should be okay. So if you got those guys, probably okay to stick with him if you really want to stick with Liverpool assets. I mean, that's your gamble, not mine. Home to Arsenal. Obviously, the last time they were at home, Liverpool, they did win 7-0 against Man United, but that's a long time ago now. A lot has happened since that day. Virgil van Dijk should be back in after illness. If you got him, you should be okay. Trent and Robertson obviously dropped in midweek. Probably got his message home to them. Trent, I'd be a little skeptical of returning. Robertson, I think, absolute no-brainer. Robertson comes back in for this game. Other little bits and pieces. Zaha's had a scan, so Wilfried Zaha looking like he could have another problem, which is not good for him or any owners. We talk about him all the time, don't we? Not something that's looking good from that point of view. Fulham, my very own Fulham, Mitrovic, an 8-game ban, it turned out to be. So, Keep him on the back burner. He'll be back for the Southampton game, 3 games from the end of the season. Bring him straight back in for that because we're going to give the Saints an absolute battering that day. Mitro's going to get a hat-trick. So just keep that on up your sleeve.
He'll finally have recovered from that injury that's been bugging him for about 3 months as well.
6 months.
The ankle will be all right by then, won't it? I think,
He'll be a good FPL pick for that game, actually. Bringing him in for Southampton, he'll be finally fresh.
Yeah, exactly that. And yeah, to be honest, mate, I think that's about it for the main team news. I mean, the only other thing I'd say is that last week I was absolutely thrown by Saka not playing for Arsenal. He was the one guy that was like irreplaceable in that team, like never rotated anything else. Had a little bit of a bug, so didn't start. That caught me out. But Saka will be good to play at Liverpool.
Harry just asked about Saka, so thank you for addressing that, Dean. And Punter says Gianni just did a Lampard by drinking water on the side, and Dean's just done the same, and Ian did the same a minute ago. It's contagious, this Lampard effect.
Well, Lampard does it every time Chelsea concede a goal, remember? So,
or Everton.
Or Everton, yeah. So watch when Chelsea go 1-0 down at Wolves this weekend, just watch. They'll cut straight to Lampard and he will be drinking from his water bottle. Absolutely guaranteed.
The only problem with all of this, mate, is Chelsea are not conceding to Wolves, and we're going to win 3-0 with Mason Mount scoring a couple. I was just looking at the Mount numbers under Lampard, and it was pretty useful. So I think 80 appearances, I think around 60 of them were starts. He got, I think, 11 goals and 12 assists, or around those sorts of numbers. So not bad. But it'll be interesting to see if he goes to a 4-3-3, Mount being the most attacking of the midfield 3, or does he continue with wing backs and it's a 3-4-3, and then is Mount one of the 2 behind the 9? I'm not sure. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does there. But
what about the goalkeeper, Gianni? Because he did have a little bit of history with Kepa, didn't he?
He did.
First
He
time around, where there seemed to be quite a lot coming out of Chelsea that Lampard didn't quite rate him.
Yeah.
So that'd be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, because he's well owned, Kepa. I've got Kepa as well, actually, in fairness. I've got De Gea as well, so probably won't be playing as much in the running for me, but that'd be a big concern and something to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, 100%. If you've still got your bench boost to play, for example, and you need your 2 keepers to come in and perform, I'd be a little bit worried, knowing what Kepa said about Lampard in the past, knowing Lampard dropped him and Lampard went out and bought Mendy. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a rotation in the goalkeeper's slot, but I don't think I'd see it straight away. I think Kepa needs a bad game for him to be dropped still. I don't think Lampard's going to come in and upset too much in terms of players that have been playing okay.
Well, he needs to lift it as well, doesn't he? So I can't see him going straight in and taking everyone on, really.
Rattling everyone,
Yeah, I can't see it personally.
He's there to keep the peace, if anything, isn't he? Keep those vibes up. So I think Kepa owners will be all right short term, but if he does have a clanger, I don't think he'll be necessarily given a game or 2 to repair that like he might have had under Potter. It'll be like, oh, okay, now Mendy comes in, he's my boy. So yeah, interesting one to monitor, Chelsea. We'll look at the fixtures in a second and we'll see. They got some good fixtures. They've got a double game week. If they do hit some form, they're an interesting FPL option as a team because they've got some still very good options. I know many of us have got Kepa. I think Chilwell and James are still very good options. And I'd like to think one of those attacking players starts scoring at some point. Ian, hit us with some Manchester news. Luke Shaw looks like he's out. What do we expect? We don't know too much about how long for, but there's a lot of Luke Shaw owners out there, yourself included, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a hamstring injury. That I can confirm that for definite. And I don't think it's as serious as feared, but with hamstrings, serious hamstrings can be months, can't they? Not just weeks. So I don't really know exactly what that means. And going back to what I was saying before, Erik ten Hag is not the most elaborate when it comes to explaining injury situations. There was some stories coming out that it wasn't as bad as first feared. And again, I'm not totally sure exactly what that means either. So he's definitely missing for this weekend. And I think it's just going to be one of those where I think I'm going to bench him because they've got the doubles coming up, because they've got some good fixtures coming up as well, and just wait and see. I mean, I suppose that's the advantage of people like myself who wildcarded game week 29 and played my bench boost in game week 29. You've still got a lot of options, haven't you? So the ability to have someone like Luke Shaw on your bench and not be as worried as you would have been at other parts of the season is quite easy at the moment. And it allows you a bit of time to see exactly how long he's out for. The other interesting aspects from the Manchester United team news was that Christian Eriksen's back in the squad for the match against Everton. He's been missing for 10 weeks after that tackle from Andy Carroll in the FA Cup. And obviously that then is the knock-on effect it has on Bruno Fernandes in his position, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later on. But that's good news for United to have him back. And he was threatening to be an FPL option again for us, wasn't he? Earlier on in the campaign, he was the leading assist maker for Manchester United when he picked up his injury. And he was a pretty important component for Ten Hag. So I can see when he's fit, him going back in to the starting lineup. As far as City's concerned, there wasn't much more information about the fitness of players there. I think Phil Foden's still missing after having his appendix removed. But certainly Haaland and Shaw were the headlines, weren't they, this week?
Yeah, and at Man City, and I want to just push you on midfielders we should be shopping for, because I myself am looking for a midfielder at Man City. My options, I guess, I could afford Mahrez, Gundogan, or Grealish. I'm massively favouring Grealish, I guess, because of the expected minutes. Like, I think he started the last 10. And when I look at that left-hand slot, it's like, yeah, okay, if Foden's fit, possibly it's Grealish or Foden, but Grealish is the favourite. Yet when I look at all the other positions at Man City, I can name you 2-3 guys that could play in that role. Yeah, that left attacking slot seems pretty locked for Jack Grealish, even with the fixture congestion. Maybe he misses 1 or 2 Premier League games in the run-in, but I could see him, for example, missing the Sheffield United FA Cup semi and playing all the Premier League games and all the Champions League games. He's been that good recently as well, right?
Yeah, he has. Man of the match against Liverpool in his last game, goal and assist, wasn't it, in that match too? And he's one of Pep's favourites at the moment. I think he plays every week unless there's an issue that comes up for him. Phil Foden actually was beginning to show a bit of form, wasn't he, before this appendix problem? So that's a bit of a blow for us because he's been a great option at times this season. But is Jack Grealish 6.9 million? I think I've got that right.
Yeah. He went up in price, I think, 2 nights ago. He was 6.8. Yeah, he's 6.9 now.
It's a bit of a gift, that, really, isn't it, for a City midfielder who looks like he's going to be playing most of the time? And it's not like you're having to invest 12 million in him and then worrying about whether he's playing. You're only investing 6.9 million. Southampton have got a weakness down his side as well, so he might even be a good option to jump on straight away. Aside from him, I think Foden, when he's back fit, we'll have to see how that one works out. Riyad Mahrez always is someone that you want to get in because when he plays, he gets points. But it's so inconsistent when he plays and when he doesn't play. And it doesn't matter whether you're a journalist close to Manchester City, not close to Manchester City, or you're as far away as possible. It's still impossible to work out when Riyad Mahrez seems to play. There's Bernardo Silva as well. Bernardo Silva's been effective in that right wing slot this season. He's also played in midfield. He's also played as a
left back,
inverted left back, or however you want to describe that role. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, actually, and asked what his best position was. And he said that it was central midfield in that attacking role as one of the 2 sort of 10s that City play with. But yeah, he's in and out as well, isn't he? So there's Gundogan too. There's Kevin De Bruyne, of course. But De Bruyne has been left out so much lately that I just don't know if
can't touch him, can you?
On him like we did before. Gundogan's usually the one when Haaland's playing who's really pushing forward and getting up alongside him. De Bruyne has done that at times this season as well, but there's just not necessarily the form there or the consistency of starts, depending on whether it's De Bruyne or Gundogan to really go for them. I think probably at the minute, Jack Grealish is the one that you're going to get if you're going to get any of them.
Yeah, and when you look at De Bruyne at certain money, you need someone not just absolutely nailed for 90, which he has been in the past, but hasn't been in the last 10 game weeks. But you need someone that's consistently going to deliver and guarantee those points and be a captaincy option. And De Bruyne is unfortunately just not that. And Alvarez has come in and played that role really well. Dean, what do you reckon? Man City mids, anyone that sort of takes your fancy? Would you be close on Grealish? Or?
I'm so close on Grealish. Like you'll see my team in a minute. My problem is I just don't know who I'll take out of my midfield to get Grealish in. I'm like, if I'm bringing in Haaland, they got Southampton. Like, honestly, Southampton, they beat City, to be fair, in the cup, like not that long ago. So I shouldn't be too hard on them here. But when they're bad, they're very bad. And Man City, coming off the performance that they've just put in last time out, it's a potential for a maul in here. And so I feel like I'm low on Man City assets. And I do really, really want Grealish. We'll get around to it, as I say, in a minute when we look at my team. But he is just the standout. As you say, like such good value as well.
Yeah, I think he's like 3% owned, proper differential. No one in your mini leagues, guys, will have Jack Grealish. And that ceiling is so high for Man City players at the moment. They just look like a team. We saw it against Leipzig. We saw it against last time out. They're a team that feel like they can score 3, 4, 5 goals a game plus even. And there's very few teams in the league we can say that for. So Haaland alone might not be enough if you feel like you can back the blue half of Manchester there. Let's move on. We're going to look at
goals
some
though, Grealish, does he? Sorry, Gianni,
no, he doesn't. He gets the assist though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I'm just looking at his recent
great.
form. He got the goal against Liverpool, but then you've got to go back to game week 23 for a goal against Arsenal, game week 20 against United, all the way back then to game week 8. You know, he is only 6.9 million, and he plays a lot, and his expected assists are more the stat that you're looking at maybe, but yeah, he's not been a consistent goal scorer for City.
And he doesn't pick up that many bonus points either, which is a bit of an issue when you're going big on a team. You want to buy players that pick up bonus, but because you're competing with your teammates with bonus points, well, you know, De Bruyne, Haaland, a Man City defender, if they keep a clean sheet, they're all the bonus point hogs. And Grealish needs to probably get 2 attacking returns in a game to guarantee bonus.
What does Pep say about Grealish, Ian? Because like obviously like this was always going to be a big season for Grealish anyway, and I know that you know, listen to a lot of people that cover City, they say like he really believed in him this season. But what does he expect him to be, and what should his output be compared to what it is, do you think?
It's fluctuated with Grealish because when he wasn't contributing goals and assists, Guardiola was still praising him about the role that he played in transitioning the team, getting them up the pitch, keeping possession. I think the aspect of winning free kicks and relieving pressure is helpful for City at times. But now that he is contributing with goals and assists, not perfectly consistently, but more consistently than previous, he's one of Pep's favourites. Yeah, he absolutely sings his praises at every given opportunity. And I think Pep also likes the fact that it looks like Jack has really dug in. It's been a weird season for getting a measure on Pep, because if you look at the patterns that there's been this campaign, it's been really hard to sort of work out when someone was going to be in the team or out of the team for a run. So like Ruben Diaz, for example, has started every match recently. Now, only a couple of months ago, he couldn't get a minute in the Premier League. And now he's a key component in Pep's team. João Cancelo started the season as one of the people that we could pick because we knew he'd be in the team every week. Now he's at a different club. Rico Lewis had a run where he seemed like he was getting picked every week. Now he's on the bench all the time. Kyle Walker's on the bench all the time. Bernardo Silva's barely played. So in some ways, the extra players on the periphery of the team for City have been even harder to pick this year than ever before. But it seems like when they're in and when Pep's speaking them up in his press conferences and in his interviews, you can pretty much be sure that they're going to stay in the team unless there's a drastic change, really. So someone like Ruben Diaz now looks like a good pick in defence. Nathan Ake last season barely played a minute. This season is the key man in that City defence when they make that switch to invert in John Stones, who it's been lately. Cancelo it's been, because Ake is the one who can play on that left-hand side as a left-back or as a left centre-half. So he seems like a good pick to me as well for the running, Nathan Ake.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just to pick up on a few questions that are coming in the comments, or not even comments, questions, sorry, more just statements. But John says Grealish ticks along, but he's not greedy enough for hauls. I think that is a pretty valid point. This one makes me laugh. Mark says the defensive work Grealish has put in recently is impressive. Grealish, off the back of one long tracked back run, has completely changed everybody's
Perception. It really has, hasn't it?
It was a good track back run, though, wasn't it? In fairness, but
like he's going to be rememred for 10 years later. I'll be talking about his career. Be like, remember that day when he tracked back? Oh yeah,
like, what he did his job. He actually worked hard and tracked back and stuck with his man. Yeah, so that's something Mason Mount does every game. Like, not that we should be comparing the two, but you know,
say Mason Mount's better than Jack Grealish, Johnny, are you?
Well, I'd rather have him in my team.
Oh,
yeah, not in my fantasy team, but I'd rather have him in my England team. Yeah,
but you wouldn't rather have him in your fantasy team, no?
No, because one of them plays for Man City. One of them scores is in a team that scores 5 goals a game, or feels like they can score 5 goals a game. And Chelsea, they feel like they've got a kind of 1 goal ceiling at the moment. So yeah, Chelsea attack despite owning Havertz. I'm looking to swerve.
I'm not saying anything.
It's a sore subject, mate.
He's not having it, mate. He's not having it.
Guys in the chat, thank you for all your comments. And yeah, as Dean mentioned, a few of them. We'll get to like more questions later in the show. We'll do some quick fire questions before the end, guaranteed. But let's have a quick look and get Ian and Dean's take on some of those fixture runs for the likes of Man City in our tips and chips section. Oh no, Mark's a Derby fan. He said Grealish all day long over Mount. Mark, come on! I thought you were my boy, my Serie A lover out there. But he's gone Grealish over Mount. Look, Ben Crellin's spreadsheet is always important to have a little glimpse at. And just wanted to touch base on. We're saying we like Man City assets, and I want to explain kind of why. We can see here, yes, they blank in game week 32. But for those of you like me and Ian, are you also free hitting 32?
Yeah, that's my plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're planning a free hit 32 because you've got big commitment on the Manchester clubs or Chelsea and Brighton, then look at that City run. Like Southampton, Leicester next 2. Arsenal at home, yeah, we don't know what happens there. But then it's a double game week. Then it's Leeds Everton, then another probable double game week, and then Brentford. And when you look at all these weeks, I think we're probably going to be captaining Haaland 6, 7 of these weeks. Like most of these weeks, Haaland will be our captain. Maybe game week 33, we plays Arsenal. Maybe not, but there's not many standout options. So we're captain Haaland. We were all buying Haaland back. And my big question is, why are we not going bigger on Man City? Because if Haaland's getting points, then someone else is getting points. If he's scoring goals, who's getting the assists? And yeah, we can't all going out and going by De Bruyne. But I think there's a real argument to say, by that double game week in 34, we need triple City. And for me, that's a midfielder that we can afford easily and not ruin our teams. Jack Grealish does that. And then definitely a Man City defender because their expected goals against them so low. So going and buy a Stones, an Ake or a Diaz just makes complete sense. From the defenders mentioned, Ian, who have you got your eye on? Like if you were to go and buy one of them, because the 3 I've just mentioned don't really, none of them are Cancelo, right? None of them are going to offer goal or assist threat.
No.
But the clean sheets are there, the bonus points are there. So I guess when picking, we're just going for who's the most nailed, who gets the most games. And it feels like Diaz and Ake maybe slightly over Stones just because the Stones can't play 3 times a week every week because of his injuries.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Stones' importance to the system for City has grown, no doubt, with the way that they're playing at the moment as a 4, with Stones stepping into midfield alongside Rodri when they're in possession. So I'm not sure any of the other City defenders, other than maybe Rico Lewis, are as comfortable at doing that as John Stones. So I'd keep an eye on his importance to the team because he's also a decent set-piece threat as well. Diaz looks nailed, but I don't like using the word nailed when it comes to Manchester City because, as we've talked about several times already on this stream, it's really hard to predict. Nathan Ake is the top scoring defender for City this season, and it looks to me like he is a clear first choice ahead of Aymeric Laporte, who was the other option at that sort of left back slot for Manchester City. Pep said in the past that Ake is important for the build-up, and also he loves the one-on-one defending that Ake brings to City's defence, especially when he's in that 3 when City are in possession. He's quick to react in transitions and one-on-one against some talented right wingers in the league this year. Pep really trusts him. So I think out of everyone, Ake's my choice, and he's actually probably the cheapest option of the 4. The cheapest option of the 4 that have been playing Ake, Stones, Akanji, and Diaz.
Nice. He also, because of that one-on-one defending you mentioned, interceptions, blocks, clearances, all really well rewarded in the BPS, and Ake from memory picks them up really nicely. And a little bit of goal for, I think, did he score 2 really good goals or 2 goals for Holland in the week?
He scored against Arsenal in the Cup as well, didn't he? A decent goal from memory.
Did. Yeah, he did. Right foot, I think it was.
The only thing with him is that lately he's been in the team every week for the Premier League because City have had the other sort of cup competitions, and now it's Bayern Munich in the Champions League. I mean, Ake is absolutely certain to start both of those games. So it's just what effect, that match does have on Pep's selection in the next 2 or 3, depending then who they then sort of face if they get through. So maybe the Champions League you keep an eye on. But like I said at the outset, the league is so important for Manchester City. Pep was absolutely clear on that in the press conference earlier. So based on that, you think Ake is going to play the Premier League as much as he's going to play the Champions League, really?
Yeah. Punter asked about using triple captain if he's using bench boost in game week 34. Punter, I'd say you're set. I'd still, like, the beauty if you've still got your triple captainship is Man City have still got 2 double game weeks. And the best player in the game plays for Man City. And not many of us triple captained Haaland this season. Well, a lot went, some did go Haaland, but a lot went Rashford and were rewarded for it. So I don't mind those fixtures. Chelsea, Brighton aren't great in game week 37, but you expect Man City to be scoring goals in both those fixtures. So I'd still be using it in 37 and going on the big man. Let's have a look at captaincy for this game week, Dean. I'm going to get your take here because if we look at the next graphic, we can see from Fantasy Football Scout a kind of selection of captains outside of Haaland. Now, I'm guessing the three of us will talk about our teams in just a sec. We're going to be bringing Haaland in and we're probably going to be giving him the armband. But if we look at the other captaincy candidates and we look at the last 6 matches, we can see the expected goal involvement. It's filtered by, on the right-hand side, Jesus is fairly high. Watkins has got Aston Villa at home. Rashford's got a home fixture. Anyone that tempts you away from Haaland, Dean, if we look at captaincy?
I mean, they're not going to, because I've just literally brought Haaland back in today. And if I'm bringing him back, he's captain at Southampton, no doubt about it. But if I hadn't have taken the plunge on Haaland, I was literally thinking earlier on, what am I going to do here? And I was probably sticking it on Rashford, just because I trust him. I know he'd had a couple of games where he hadn't scored before, finding it the other day, but still think he's reliable. I tell you what, like Ollie Watkins, I haven't got Ollie Watkins, but kind of wish I did. Like I wish I'd have, when he started to turn the corner, like it really does feel like he's stepped out of Danny Ings' shadow and just like, now I'm the main man. Give me all the responsibility you want. I will deliver. Because since literally the next day he's left the club, he can't stop scoring. There's talk today as well about Ollie Watkins getting a new contract at Aston Villa. Like he's become that important. Like honestly, like at the start of January, there was talk Ollie Watkins was on his way out of Aston Villa and he might be leaving. And like that's how quickly these things change. But he's got so much confidence. So if I had Watkins, looking at his fixture as well this weekend, I think I'd be going Ollie Watkins as well.
Forest are the worst away team, I think, in the Football League. Like, it's a lovely fixture there for Ollie Watkins. What about you, Ian? Anyone that would tempt you away from Haaland, or are you? I mean, firstly, are you set on Haaland, and if not, who would you go?
Yeah, I am set on Haaland. Exactly what Dean said, really. The plan was to bring him back this week and captain him. Nothing that I've heard or seen has put me off that, so that's what I'll be doing. But yeah, Ollie Watkins would definitely be the second choice. Because he's just been so reliable lately. The only thing I'll say with him is he's more Harry Kane than Erling Haaland in the sense that his ceiling tends to be about 8 or 9 a match, doesn't it? I was looking at his record across the season. He's only actually hit 2 double-digit scores in a single game. He's had that in game weeks because it's been, double like the week just gone where he got 8 and 9. But yeah, game week 2 against Everton, he got 11. Game week 22 against Leicester, he got 11. Other than that, it's been around the ceiling of the 7, 8, 9 mark. So maybe not the most explosive, but then again, Bournemouth at home is one of the best fixtures that he'll have. And Villa's form at the moment is so good. And actually going to Villa as well, going back to that insight that maybe you get as a journalist that you don't as a fan, go into the ground, go into the training ground, speaking to people around the club. There's just a real buzz about Villa at the minute that makes you think that their form's going to continue. Their form's been great as well over the last sort of 5 or 6. So I think Watkins is a good option this week, especially for people chasing who might be trying to be a bit different. I think Gianni's frozen, is he?
He's either bored or
giving it a real good think.
Bored or frozen, I can't tell. We might as well just carry on the chat until he comes back. De Bruyne, I don't see as an option at all at the moment. You talked earlier on about just like inconsistency, not just in terms of performance levels, but in terms of whether he even makes it onto the pitch.
Yeah.
And Saka, I mean, look, if you're going to have an Arsenal asset, I think he would have to be the one that you would go for, isn't it? But I was thinking, like, I presume Saka is still the penalty taker, but Gabby Jesus did take one the other day and he is back in the mix now. So there is just that element of doubt. Last time I spoke about this on Monday and people were like, nah, Saka still pens. But a few people were like, well, there has also been an argument before that whoever wins the pen gets the pen. So I don't know if I like that element of it.
No, that's enough uncertainty to make you think twice, isn't it? The other thing as well, Liverpool, okay, the form lately has not been great, but their issues have really been away from home. It's not been at Anfield. I mean, the last game at Anfield, they beat United 7-0. So do you need to look even any further back than that to know that the game this weekend might be a bit different to the games that they've had at City and at Real Madrid and whatever else? Just looking at their home form in the league, they've won the last 3 in a row. So I don't think it's an easy game for Arsenal. And you'd like to think that Liverpool would react after the week that they've had. I'm going to start Saka. I don't think you bench him or sell him or anything like that for this game, but I'm not sure I'm confident enough to captain him.
Exactly that. Like I have full trust in Saka playing. I still think he'll deliver throughout the course of the season. But I think captaincy probably not an issue. I'll tell you what, while G's is gone, let's just look at, we can talk through my team because he doesn't need to see my team for the umpteenth time this season. So let's just move on and we'll get the graphics up of my team. So let's have a look at that.
That's good timing.
Back here you go. Here he is.
Back. I'm going to see Dean's team for the umpteenth time.
There you go. I thought
it.
What I could do without this, to be fair. I might save this Friday night. Yeah. But yeah, here's my team. So this isn't actually my team anymore. So like about 3 hours ago, I brought in Haaland. So I brought him in for João Felix. João Felix was a punt that I took. Like his performances have been really good for Chelsea. The bloke just can't score goals. Like the bloke, for whatever reason it is, João Felix cannot finish, can he? Like I don't know what it is. Now I've taken him out. I'm sure he will start, but João Felix is gone for me this season now. Havertz just got the nod over him on the fact that he takes pens. But also there is this element I really don't trust Frank Lampard, so I don't want too many Chelsea assets for the rest of the season. So look at the midfield, lads. This is what I was talking about earlier on when I was talking about Grealish. I have got another transfer. Don't necessarily want or need to use it this week, I don't think. But if I was to do something, then I could bring Grealish into the midfield. But I'm like, well, I need these Brighton assets are supposed to be there for a reason, that they stay all season because they got so many doubles. The two Arsenal players, I find it hard to separate them, apart from the fact that one's 2 million more than the other. And Rashford, I can't risk taking him out. What do you think? Do you think there's any point in risking any of these players for Jack Grealish?
No. I think I'd hold, especially knowing you're not free hitting in 32. You need your Arsenal players. Does Ben Mee play in 32? I think he does. So you probably need him. So I'm thinking maybe you sell me to bring in a Man City defender.
Oh yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah,
but I think those midfielders, I'd be very reluctant to sell any of those five. Ian, what do you reckon?
The same, really. Yeah. If you really push me, I'd probably say Martinelli, but I'm probably saying that with the fact that I know I've got a 3 at 32 coming up, so I can have him that week if I want him. And you also think that, Liverpool's weakness has been down their right-hand side a lot. The last few matches, the left winger always seems to be the man of the match. It seems like teams are really attacking that side of the Liverpool back line. So, he could well have a start at Anfield and do well. So would it be for a hit as well then?
No, I've got another free transfer now.
Right, so it's two free transfers.
Yeah, 2 free transfers.
Probably Martinelli. I'm really jealous of you though, Dean, because you've got Matoma, and I am kicking myself about Matoma. I'm an idiot. Wow. It's one of the things that I've really annoyed myself with this season. You always have that one player who you're like, why on earth do I not own this guy? And I've got McAllister in March. I brought in him a wild card for budget reasons. McAllister I brought in last week because I was seduced by the stats, but Matoma's just the best player, isn't he? Sometimes you can read, into all the expected this and the expected that, but sometimes just sat there watching a game of football and watching how effective Matoma is. And I've been looking at him for weeks. I mean, it was like pre-25 where you're like, I won't bring him in yet because the blanket in 25. I should have been on Matoma literally about 10 game weeks ago. And somehow, all these weeks later, I still don't own him. And I'm annoyed because I just don't know why. I do know why because I've just explained it, but
no.
Yeah.
Well, I'm kicking myself a bit because in the last game week I captained March instead of Matoma. I still don't know.
Although the stats were daft, weren't they? I mean, Gianni's a big fan, and we know that, don't we? He's had March since
forever.
Forever,
a long time. The minute I bought him, I watched him live a couple of days later, and I went, I should have gone Matoma. And in that game, Matoma scored a worldie against Leicester, and March again missed a sitter. And since that moment, I've thought I was always on the wrong guy. Finally, wildcarded, bought Matoma in alongside March. But then decided to give March the armband and
McAllister. Mate, it's so funny. Every time that there is this dilemma and we pick March, Matoma scores, and my head just goes back to when you spoke to Jules Breach, and she's like, "Oh no, you've got to always take Matoma. He's the goal threat. Always take Matoma." Like a Brighton fan watches every game, knows her stuff, and she said that, and we still go against it all the time. Like, what are we doing?
Well, the McAllister thing as well, where you're watching the game, and he's involved, no doubt, and he's in the right sort of positions. And again, the stats are really good. That's why I brought him in last week. But when you watch Brighton, Matoma is the exciting one, isn't he? He's the one that gets you off your seat. He's the one who looks like he's going to curl it at any moment in the top corner and beat a man, and all that sort of stuff. So I know that. So why don't I own him? Almost to the point where at some point, because they've got so many doubles as well,
you'll make the sideways move.
Just gonna have to bite the bullet and take a -4, because even if it doesn't pay off, at least I'll feel better about myself. It's one of them.
Yeah, I think so. You'll make those 4 points up, but then you have the dilemma: which of the two do you sell between March and McAllister? But you can get to that when it comes, I guess. Okay, let's move on. We've got another couple of team reveals to go past. The Dean's probably just going to go Haaland, but possibly use his second transfer. But I get that, Dean. I think you're in good, mate.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Who we got next? We're going to show... Again, we're keeping that banner on the bottom because for all three of us, Haaland is coming in. And for all three of us, he's going to be our captain. So I guess for me, the dilemma is which one do I bring Haaland in for, Tony or Havertz? And I know everyone's going to be shouting, going, there's no way Gianni will sell Kai, and he's a biased Chelsea fan. I am going to be selling Tony, but it makes complete sense knowing, one, he's got 3 games to go without picking up a yellow card, or he gets a 2-match suspension. So up to his 32nd game. So he's got to get to that after that Villa game to not get a yellow card. So Newcastle, Wolves, Villa, I think there's a good chance he picks up a yellow in one of those 3. But more importantly, he's very likely to be banned for a very long time. It was suggested that ban would take place in April from the betting scandal. So again, with that round the corner, I just can't risk it. Havertz, I don't know if he's going to be one of Lampard's boys. When I look at who Lampard was picking, Havertz wasn't one of the popular assets under Frank. But for now, against Wolves, I think he starts. Yeah. I'm going to keep him in my team. But yeah, I think Tony against Newcastle, arguably this week and this week only, I prefer Tony than Havertz, but I've just got to think moving forward. So Haaland comes in for Tony, but to do that, I need 0.1 million. Any suggestions, Ian and Dean, where I get that 0.1 million? Because at the moment, it's Maddison out, Grealish in, but I could be swayed. It could be Henry down to a bench fodder defender. Where do I get my 0.1 million from with Tony to Haaland? Ian, I'll come to you first.
First of all, did you say come to Ian or Dean? Sorry, I just...
Nah, Ian, you go.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd keep Ivan Tony and get rid of Havertz, so you need to find 0.3. I think Tony's he's almost becoming a differential because so many people are going to sell him to fund the move for Haaland, and his form has been really good. I know about the booking, I know about the ban that's coming, but I think you can probably just address that further on down the line. Do you remember when we waited for Diego Costa to get a yellow card? And I think we're still waiting for him to get that next yellow card, to be honest. It took that long. I suppose your other option maybe is to remove Raya, is it? And just get, a goalkeeper that's not going to play if you're not going to need your second keeper. Perhaps that's a bit of a gamble given what we were saying about Kepa and Lampard's history in the past. But that's definitely an option. I think draining the value out of who you see as your 15th man effectively is probably the way to go, because actually your team looks pretty well set.
So I could go Henry to Nico Williams, who's 3.8. So that saves me 0.7, and Nico can just sit as third sub.
Yeah.
But I prefer Grealish to Maddison, not just this week, but moving forward.
Maddison hasn't had a good points return in a long time. Like, I'm just trying to get it up now. Yeah, go. Game week 23, they beat Tottenham 4-1. He got 11 points. Since then, there's a lot of 0s, 1s and 2s in that list. I know, he's obviously a good player, and between now and the end of the season, there'll be a couple of bumper days, but unfortunately, you don't know when they're coming, do you? No.
And even against Bournemouth, the way Leicester are playing, I fancy Bournemouth to get a result there. Watching Leicester the other night, on Tuesday night, Maddison played right of a front 3. So ineffective because he's having to defend loads because they've not got the ball. Yeah. At least Rodgers was playing him in the 10. Only set piece threat. That's all he had the other night. So what would you reckon, Dean? Would you go Maddison Grealish?
I think I would, yeah. I think I would, because he's still going to give you an edge. Like, we keep talking about, the fact that Grealish is looking like one of Man City's best players, but most people aren't going to transfer him in this week. Surely he starts. It's Southampton, like we said. There's more chance in this next game week of Grealish getting a good haul than Maddison, surely. Like, just logically anyway. So I think that's a good way to go.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on. We've got to show Ian's team. We've only got a couple of minutes left of the show. Ian, you're up next. What are your plans?
Yeah, Haaland's in already for Ivan Toney, despite what I just said to you about the only other thing I'm considering is whether I take a -4, so in defence. So at the minute, well, I was planning on starting Trippier, Chilwell and Shaw, but obviously Shaw's injured now. So I'd need to pick one from Estupiñán and Zinchenko to start. So what I'm actually thinking when I was looking at the lineup of the games coming up for Manchester City, I'm wondering whether Aki for Zinchenko actually for a -4 this week might pay me back straight away, and then I'm much better set then for the running because I've got that free hit in 32. So if I want an Arsenal defender that week, I can bring him back in. And when I was looking at the comparison of the Arsenal and City fixtures, I can see a lot more clean sheets for City than Arsenal in the remaining games. So I could maybe do that this week, bench Shaw, pending more information, and go at it like that. But yeah, like I say, Haaland's in for Toney, and I'm just debating that extra hit maybe.
Nice, I like it. I'd go City early if I could, and if I can make up my 0.2 or 0.3 on a City defender easily this week, that would be my move. That
you're not benching Bruno Fernandes, by the way, Gianni, are you?
I am benching Bruno to start potentially Kai Havertz.
Ooh,
yeah. Look, I mean, you can tell me about Bruno maybe in our next feature, in against the obvious. But the way he's played in the last couple of games, I'd be playing him purely in the hope he gets a penalty. I cannot see a Bruno Fernandes goal in open play against Everton. So yeah, I think he'll be on my bench. But let's move on to against the obvious. Okay, we got seconds each. Dean, is Kepa yours or mine? I can't even remember who I picked.
Yeah, Kepa is one of mine. So I'm happy to slate Chelsea players. You know that. So whenever we're ready, I can just get going and just slate slate Kepa. Look, the fact is, just to get going, like Kepa is actually my goalkeeper, and for this week, I am actually just going to keep him because like there's a decent chance he still plays. Like we say, Lampard might not even pick that much of the team this week, and they'll go to Wolves. There's a chance that he gets a decent point return. Beyond that point, I don't think I want Kepa anymore for Chelsea. We already addressed the fact that he might not be first choice for Lampard. He's certainly going to get rotated at some point this season. Mendy will definitely get more of a chance than he was getting previously. There's the Champions League fixtures to weigh into this too. Chelsea going into a double header against Real Madrid. They're going to get an absolute maul-in, so that'll do nothing for their confidence. I just don't think any longer that Kepa can be a good asset in this game. And I think that on the back of that, I'm going to have to take him out. I think that there's a lot of inconsistencies that are going to crop up across the Chelsea team. But even looking at the Chelsea fixtures, you know, they've got a blank in 32. And either side of that, Brighton and at home should be decent fixtures. I don't think they are anymore. They're not fixtures I want to touch.
Fair argument, mate. Fair argument. I wish I could defend, but maybe after this weekend and Chelsea clean sheet, I'll be able to defend that a little bit better. Okay, nice. Well, that's Kepa. I've got a treat for you as well, and so has Ian, so stay tuned for that. If you like what you're seeing, guys, then please do hit that like button. I'm going to sell you 60 seconds worth of reasons why not to buy or why even you should be selling Ivan Toney this week. Here we go. Let's start that clock. So, Ivan Toney, I've mentioned the yellow card thing. I've mentioned the betting ban, but let's also talk about his opponents this week. Yes, it's his old club. And we like to spin that narrative sometimes, don't we? Like, he'll score against his old club. But the Newcastle defence is elite, like, especially in recent weeks. Their attacks looked really good, but the defence has been so good. The clean sheet against Man United looked like it was always going to happen from minute one of that football match. And then even in the week against West Ham scored, and yes, it was at home. You expect them maybe to get a goal. It was from a set piece. It was from a Nick Pope error. Those things don't happen very often. I'm expecting a Newcastle clean sheet in this one. The Brentford attack, their numbers are on the down, and the Newcastle defence, their numbers are on the up. I just think this looks like a 2-pointer for Toney. I'm really hoping he does pick up that yellow. Remember, if he does, he's got a 2-match suspension. That's if he's not already suspended for for his betting scandals. So for me, he's an easy sell because you'll have a headache in a week or two, inevitably.
I like it. So we've battered Chelsea, we've battered Brentford. This is like a Fulham dream, mate. I'm loving this. I can't wait to see Ian batters.
Oh, who you got for us, Ian?
Tell me it's QPR.
Yeah. The team that knocked you out of the FA Cup.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bruno Fernandes is my against the obvious. I'm backtracking a little bit, which maybe I'll get to in the last 20 seconds of this, but you can start the clock. Bruno Fernandes' form of late is absolutely no reason to bring him in. No goals in the last 7 Premier League matches for him, just 2 assists in the last 8 Premier League matches. He just doesn't look like the player that he was before for Manchester United as an FPL option, mainly because United just aren't winning penalties anymore. They've won 2 penalties in the Premier League this season. Only one team, Liverpool, have won fewer. In the past, they were second in 2021 with 11. In 1920, they were first with 14 penalties. So from that height to this, it's completely different. The only reason I'm backtracking a little bit is because his position is in question with Eriksen coming back. That might push Bruno Fernandes forward a little bit more. And Martial being in the team, Bruno Fernandes and Martial link up really well as well. So that's maybe the only thing. But Ten Hag has been so positive about Bruno in that deeper position. And I don't see it being something that just gets scrapped straight away because of how good he was in that Brentford game in particular and how much the manager praised him.
Oh, love that. I would love to have debated these 3 against the obviouses because I wanted your take again on Tony, and I'm sure me and Dean could add loads to the Bruno debate. But we don't have time. We're out of time, guys. But that was an awesome show. Look, that Bruno info is really key. And I think that's the reason I'm going to be benching Bruno. And I do want Bruno in my team. So I'm not going to sell him because there's doubles around the corner. And I think we'll see him in that 10 role. But for now, I think he's probably going to be benched. Dean, that was loads of fun. You're back on Monday, are you?
I'll be back on Monday, mate. Yeah, no Easter for me.
Ian, we might have to show your team on Monday's show so we can see how you got on. But you're expecting a green arrow?
Oh, I hope so. That's why I've come on the show, isn't it? Chasing.
We'll bring green arrows here, mate. We can't guarantee you get them, but we chase them for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Intended green arrow. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly, mate. It's been lovely having you on from the chat
really
about Pep and being in Manchester and press conferences to some of your FPL takes as well. So really appreciate your time. And we'd love to have you on again in the not too distant.
Yeah, I'd love to be on, mate. Give us a shout when you're free and I'll jump back on. But yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Nice one. Thanks, mate.
Cheers,
Good
Dean.
stuff. And guys in the chat, thank you so much for being with us in the last hour. If you are just tuning in, then do go back and watch the last hour. You know those quotes you've seen on FPL Twitter today about Erling Haaland? Well, those quotes came from Ian's questions to Pep only a few hours ago, and we speak about that earlier in the show. Before you do leave, if you hit that like button, that would be much appreciated. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We go live every Monday and every Friday evening. But for now, he's been Ian, he's been Dean, I've been Gianni, and we've been chasing green arrows.